No. Yeah.
And I'll turn it on.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session about accelerating the deployment of sustainable aviation fuel. For those who are close to the action in the aviation sector, it's probably a topic that you have come across a few times this week. Today is Transport Day. Earlier today, some of you probably have been at the ATAC forum, and we already wrestled a little bit with that. Just a brief recap. I was there the first hour, and then I think somehow the panel had centered on the analysis. It's about feedstock policy and finance. Yeah, feedstock policy and finance. And the good thing is actually with our distinctive panel, so we can cover all of them in one way or the other. My name is Christoph Wolff. I'm the CEO of the Smart Freight Center. So we are, I used to be at the World Economic Forum, so connected with some of you because of the Clean Skies of Tomorrow platform. And now actually the Smart Freight Center is working on book and claim guidelines and together with RMI and others doing the book and claim community. So we're trying to actually bring together parties, industrials that want to invest into sustainable aviation fuel directly. It's one way of accelerating. They need registries. We just will hear about that, I'm sure, a little in a second. And so we are actually also very interested in yesterday morning, my first session in the morning was because we also want to bring sustainable aviation fuels to emerging markets. So we working together with ICAO and many others on actually bringing the production of sustainable aviation fuel, including the finance, which is not trivial, to Kenya as a front runner. So I first would like to invite Jane Hoope from the envoy of the ICAO Secretary General to the UNFSC COP to give us a keynote speech, and I'm sure he will share with us some exciting news from CAF3. And maybe some impressions of how this week went. Yeah, please come on.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for Topsoe for the invitation. You know, we always say it's easier to speak when we get to say just good news, and I'm bringing very good news this week to COP. 15 days ago, exactly 15 days ago, we had a breakthrough in terms of our aviation clean energy transition, and with that, I can really say aviation clean energy transition is on, which is, the good news I bring to you. What happened was that we, after 1 year of our decision in the last assembly to have a long-term aspirational goal to align the aviation sector with the Paris Agreement temperature goals going to net zero 2050, leading to that, we made so many studies to show the feasibility for in-sector action to do so that we could take the decision in a good basis. In all those studies, and we had 3 projections, low, medium, high. Every time it was so clear, clean energy would be the element that would provide us with the biggest reduction on CO2 emissions moving forward. So if you want to get to the net zero 2050, we are serious about it, we had to, get to clean energy head and front. And so we said, okay, big priority now is to put the framework in place to do so. We were not putting a framework to start working on clean energy. We have done that since 2007. So we already had a huge framework that would go from, criteria for the sustainability under cost. Although we are aviation, we were the only global criteria for sustainable aviation fuels. We have done so much work. We are flying with sustainable fuels, but there was not the certainty, the clarity, the predictability that we needed in the market to really say we are going here and that's serious, that's where we are going, etc. So what we did, and the big breakthrough in this framework is we had the long-term and now we have a short-term goal, which is for 2030, for clean energies. So the outcome was by 2030, 5% of the CO2 has to be reduced through clean energy. Through clean energy. Not operations, not technology, not the clean energy. And to do that, we'll have to then produce the big amount of fuels to get to that 5%. Of course, it's not only about ambition, this framework. It's about the ambition, and the same ambition on the goal has to be there for the means of implementation, otherwise it's not going to realize. So capacity building was a big issue, technology transfer, the issue of financing being so big. So we are going to both monitor the ambition and all the means of implementation. And in 2028, we'll have the next conference, which is before the 2030, to check on our ambition, to check where we are. Why? Because we thought that we can do better, but it was very difficult to have 193 states, and that's our membership in ICAO, to agree on something more ambitious than this 5% when we only have 0.1% of the CO2 emissions being addressed right now. And we are saying for 2030 already 5%. So we tried very hard to make the case on everything that's happening that has to be realized before 2030, and that we had very good vibes to go up to possibly 10. But they said, okay, we go 5 and we review in 2028. Why I'm saying we can go to 10? Because since we had the big results and we had an analysis in January this year for the short term, we kept on monitoring what was happening up to the conference 15 days ago, and we continue to monitor. You just open the website, we have what we call ICAO trackers for the number of airports distributing, the number of announcements. So only announcements on clean energy for aviation, most of which on SAF, we had more than 100 announcements. If that's not the clean energy transition of aviation happening, I don't know what it is. And, you can come back to me and say, come on, Jane, announcements, Well, announcements, of course, not 100% of those announcements will be realized the way they are being showed up right now. We know there's so many factors far beyond our imagination that influence an announcement, a project to move forward. But I can assure you one thing. With the framework that we have now approved under ICAO for clean energy, the chances for those 100 projects are so much higher. And that is what is the big realization of this framework. We have now an objective. We have now clarity on what we want. We had adopted the criteria that we had already globally approved for CORSIA as the basis for the entire framework. So it's not for CORSIA anymore. We are agreeing to use that as a basis to SAF. Of course, looking more into the accountability because there's more systems coming forward that account for things outside the CORSIA itself, MRV. But, we had the ambition, the goal, we have the regulatory framework, we have the means of implementation, and the basis for financing. On capacity building, we have ACT-SAF, which is the program from ICAO, and we have for financing already, we are ongoing FinVest, which is to connect with the financial side. In leading to CAF3, we call the financial area in ICAO. We had 3 sessions with our council, with the producers and the financing community. And they came to us and said the following: we need the framework. We need clarity, certainty, predictability. We need to see if you're serious with the goal and the means of implementation. So, guys, we deliver it. So now we are expecting the finance to come. So that's the next threshold to really work. Something big in the discussions on CAF was it's too concentrated to date, the production in Europe and North America. If we want to get to net zero in 2050, if we want to get to that 5% in 2030, we need that globally. So we need plants all over the place, not only in Europe and in North America. So we have to really put our act together to do that. And, the framework's there. It's now time to put our leaves up, all hands on deck, and we need all sectors and all stakeholders to make it happen. And I always mention that we need smart, unprecedented smart cooperation. We don't need to have a duplication of 1,000 same owns. If we have a good initiative, let's all channel into that one initiative that's very good. No organization has the resources to put here, there, if we are doing the same thing. So, that's where ICAO comes very strongly. We are the aviation house. We are happy to facilitate those important initiatives to get together and move in the same direction without repeating or not being efficient. Let's use smartly our resources. That's what I'm saying, because we have a lot of work to do. So with that, I'm very pleased to set the scene for your discussions today. You are part of that framework now, and I'm looking forward to see how you are going to put all hands on deck. Thank you.
So thank you, Jane, very much for setting the stage, also for your leadership in this area. And I can say also the message, no country left behind, is important. And I would hope we will see some of this coming through in emerging markets. But I think probably today we are talking about what can be done in US and Europe predominantly. And with that, I would like to invite the panel to come and join me here. And we have Kim Carnahan, founder and CEO of Neoteric Energy and Climate, and Saba. Yeah. We have Brian Moran, Vice President of Global Sustainability Policy and Partnership from Boeing International. Elena Scaltriti, Topsoe Chief Commercial Officer, and Keith Tuffley, Chairman of Clean Energy Transition and Sustainability from Citi. And as we heard that a lot that now finance is a key element or a key barrier for scaling. I mean, Jane said she would have liked to go not just 5%, 10% by 2030. And we heard earlier today that actually some of the expectations for the de-risking are not fully aligned yet. So I'm super curious about what you will say. Policy is now, there's a goal from the international community, so there's some commitment, there's policy frameworks in the US with the incentive system, there in Europe with the mandate. There's more mandates coming up in more countries. Actually, I'm actually personally proud that actually India has moved to a small mandate by 2030. So how do you see the situation? So will now finance be able to come in full buckets and support the acceleration big way?
Well, I'm happy to touch on that. So thank you, and congratulations for putting together this great panel and important discussion. Look, obviously we'd love to see finance now rolling in for this, but I'm touching on the three major themes you mentioned a moment ago. Policy is coming into place, but obviously there's still a lot of policy support that is needed in various regions in the world. So that needs to continue. Policy support must continue. Other risks continue to be, technology still has a way to play. There is clearly great strides being shown around the technology, but it is being de-risked. But a key theme there in terms of the finance is going to be getting the right financiers to support this. Just last week, this week, Citi announced a really very innovative new project together with American Airlines and Breakthrough Energy Catalyst. And it's a great example of the right investors supporting the right stage of development. The reality is, for lending purposes, many of these projects are not bankable in terms of lendable, but they're certainly investable. But you need to have funds like Breakthrough Energy Catalyst, which has been set up with the right risk-reward equation to support such projects. We just need more of those funds to be developed. I mean, literally 3 years ago, there were very few energy transition funds even existing in the world, and yet now we've got literally billions, many billions, that are supporting these type of early stage, now growing opportunities, and Breakthrough is a really good example of that. So entering into this very innovative financing arrangement. In this particular case, Citi is effectively acting as a support mechanism because we are taking a lot of the emissions reduction from the new technology, the particular project, to reduce our Scope 3 emissions for our business travel. American Airlines is acting as the off-taker. So it's just an example of the combination of innovative finance with the right type of investor, in this case Breakthrough, to support a project like this. So that's the sort of innovation that we need to keep driving the capital. A big risk continues to be clearly the supply of the right environmentally friendly SAF is going to be critical. So to understand the true environmental impacts of the sourcing of SAF is going to be really important, and to recognise that there's competition from a land-based perspective, competition with food systems, and also competition with nature and biodiversity. We've got the Montreal Agreement in place that is demanding 30% of global land and oceans to be put aside for nature and biodiversity, and we have to be conscious of that in terms of competition for feedstock. So that's a critical element for us to be conscious of.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you touched on a number of more important topics: sustainability of feedstocks, competition of same feedstocks by different net zero transitions happening in different sectors. So I think we said earlier today, I think aviation actually needs to work to get its share of available feedstock, be it on the energy, be it on the biogenic side. Kim, I think most of these topics are resonating very well with you. So you're looking very much in creating certainty on the demand side by aggregating demand. So can you tell us a little bit more about what Saba does, what you're doing, and how this is actually supporting the acceleration of the transition?
Yeah, happy to. For those who aren't familiar with the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance, it's actually a joint initiative of two environmental NGOs, the Environmental Defense Fund and RMI, which I've been running for the last couple of years. And what Saba does is at the very heart, we've been trying to standardize the market for the purchase of voluntary SAF certificates. So corporates, companies who want to reduce their use of aviation, either business travel or transport of goods, they come to us and we do a lot of different things for them. First and foremost, on the question of sustainability, we actually created our own sustainability framework based on the CORSIA system to help our companies understand what are the elements of sustainability that they need to be looking at if they're evaluating a proposal that they're getting from a fuel provider or an airline to support SAF. We've also been working on, we just launched a new registry today, actually, a registry for voluntary SAF certificates, so that companies have a transparent, robust way to prevent double counting and to show the world and their stakeholders that they're in fact putting their money where their mouth is and retiring certificates towards their Scope 3 targets. And then we also work on SAF accounting, as well as the most important thing for most of our members is joint procurement. So we aggregate the demand from right now about 30 companies, some of the world's largest. Boeing is actually a member. Microsoft, Netflix, Lululemon, Novo Nordisk. We've got everybody from big pharma to banks to a lot of tech companies, a lot of consultancies, and they tell us how much SAF they want to buy, and we then run competitive procurement on their behalf to purchase the environmental attributes of that SAF, either from airlines if they already own the fuel, or from fuel providers if they still own the Scope 3 attributes. And we started with just a teeny tiny 1-year purchase to see, like, how is this going to work in the market? And we realized that what we needed to do is provide more certainty, longer-term demand signal to the fuel providers in particular, so that they can go to banks and say, maybe not that they can get a loan, but they can say, this is real now. Microsoft and, Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase have agreed to buy 5 years of SAF from us and to pay a pretty hefty price for it too. 5 years isn't enough. You'll hear that from every single fuel provider you talk to. They really need 10 years or 15-year offtake. We're not there yet with our members, but we're working in that direction to get them comfortable making these longer-term commitments and actually signing contracts to pay anywhere from $250 a ton to, in some cases in Europe, $800 a ton of CO2 reduced. So these are very expensive reductions that companies are, signing long-term contracts for now. So that's just a little bit about what we're doing to try to, we're not banks, so we can't provide that kind of backbone. But in a way, what we're doing is similar to what you described with American, because our members are taking the Scope 3 environmental attribute the same way that Citi is in their deal with American.
Yeah, I think you provide an important contribution to the de-risking of projects. Yeah, and I must say I remember the days that was just pre-COVID when Saba was launched. Yeah, so very briefly, and how great it has developed. So it's a place to be if you as a corporate you want to do voluntary contributions and to basically to reduce your own carbon footprint, Scope 3 carbon footprint. That's actually great to work with you. And as Smart Freight Center, we're also very happy to do so. Brian, over to you. The question here is, how do you look at this as an aircraft manufacturer? I would add to that, I think the good thing about sustainable aviation fuel is that for aircraft manufacturers, nothing much changes. Yeah. So I think so it's the same plane still. Yeah, why does it have to be certified for 100%, etc.? So there's a little bit of work to do. But we just heard Virgin went 100% and so on. So it's the same infrastructure. It's a drop-in fuel. So you should be super happy, yeah?
Yeah, our work is done here. No, not at all. Look, and first of all, thank you to Topsoe for having us. There's sort of 4 buckets that we work in, and it starts with technology, right? We're an aircraft manufacturer, so our job is to make sure it's safe to fly on SAF. The good news, it is safe to fly on SAF, but it didn't come easy. Where we started in 2008 from the very first flight on a 747, also with Virgin back then, to getting 9 different pathways certified as part of our role on the ASTM board, the body that certifies SAF. To doing the first 100% flight on a 777 in 2018, the first passenger flight with United last year, the first flight in the region on 100% SAF with Emirates, and then the Flight 100 last week with Virgin. So those are demonstration flights to prove that it's safe. And on the 100% specifically, we have some work to do together with the engine companies, together with the fuel producers, because no airplane for a long time will ever see 100% all the time. So it'll vary. It could land somewhere and fill up with 30% SAF, burn 20% of it, keep 10 in a tank, and then get 50. So the variation from 0 to 100 and back again will be with us for a long time. And because some of these synthetic fuels don't have aromatics, we need to make sure that the seals and some of the fuel systems can interact with these different fuel compositions. So that's technology, and that's first and foremost. Second is demand. Right, so we're not an airline, but this year alone we bought, in one case, 20 million liters of SAF from Neste. It makes us one of the larger purchasers of SAF, and that's us sending a demand signal into the market. Working with Saba to aggregate demand. Our role with the First Movers Coalition, where we're the sector champion for aviation, again, where we're pooling some of the most advanced SAF and sending, again, signals to regulators. So that's on the demand side. But then switch over to the supply side. Boeing is not an energy company. We're not going to produce SAF as such, but in the case with Sky Energy, we have a partnership with Sky Energy where our offtake agreement, our prepaid offtake agreement, gives them the means to go build a facility to go produce SAF. So those, again, signals through demand that help supply. And then the last bucket, the fourth bucket, is policy. Because if there's one thing that'll unlock SAF scaling, it's smart policy. And I got to congratulate Jane and the Secretariat, what you guys achieved last week at CAF. I was there, I watched it. That careful balance of leaving no country behind, but setting an ambitious target and to send, again, signals to the financing community, that was a huge achievement. So you ought to be congratulated for it. Excellent.
Yeah. So, indeed, this is absolutely great. Now, Elena, over to you. A big theme earlier today at the ATEC symposium was, do we have enough feedstock? Yeah, and there's obviously different pathways, biogenic and via renewable. And I think, what was it? Matt Gorman they calculated it would be like 20% of the space of Great Britain if you wanted to actually put all the flights on PTL. And I think the smart thing is it's going to ramp up while the unit costs come down. So there's actually a benevolent play out there. But how do you see the different the feedstock options? And tell us a bit more what Topsoe does, in this sector and where you're coming in.
Yeah, with pleasure. At Topsoe, as you might know, we are technology providers. We provide solutions to produce SAF, among many other things. And when it comes to feedstock, I think we all agree that feedstock is one of the key elements to be considered whenever you decide to enter as a SAF producer. What we do at Topsoe, we try to make the life of our customers, who are SAF producer, in this case, as easy as possible. We've looking at one of the pathways that already exist, that is based on EFA, that basically starts from feedstocks that can be waste oil, it can be used cooking oil, and it can be many other things. And what we do, we try to make our customers as flexible as it can be. Actually, our technology is called HydroFlex, clearly looking at flexibility. As a technology provider, I think we have two responsibilities. Make as many avenues possible for the industry, but also keep working on those that are already up to scale, commercial, like the HydroFlex, and keep working on that to accommodate for new and upcoming feedstocks. In the meantime, I think we have more than 100 feedstocks that have been tested in our facilities, and we keep going because they keep evolving. There are, looking at biomass feedstock. Our customers and the feedstock suppliers are creative. They look into new things, and in every region you go to, you will find new feedstocks that are being proposed and developed in order to accommodate for the growing demand. And our job is to make sure that we adapt the technology so to ensure that all the feedstocks can be processed. When we look into the longer term, we do obviously work on other technologies. We looking at what we think is coming next. We look into power to L. We have the G2L technology, gas to liquid. We look at methanol to jet, where ideally you could start either from renewable methanol or from e-methanol coming from green hydrogen and biogenic CO2. That's very much further out in the future. It will still take some time that the technology is commercially proven and at scale and ASTM approved, but that's where we are putting a lot of energy to make it happen. And maybe on this, I should also say that besides being a technology provider, we are exploring new avenues as even a producer. You might have heard about our JVA for a JV with Sasol, where we plan to become a developer, build, own, and operate SAF plants. 50-50 with a long-term partner that is Sasol. So many challenges, but as a technology provider, with limited resources we have at Topsoe, in 2022 we invested 8.6% of our revenues into R&D. So it's much, it's little. We are roughly a $1 billion company. We really try every effort to open opportunities for the industry.
No, wonderful, excellent. But Jane, so thank you very much for joining us. No, I think this is excellent. So technology is a key to the market. I mean, I've been working now in Africa on this, and in whatever country you go. So there's multiple new feedstocks or plants, waste plants you've never heard of. Yeah. So and I think there will be more creativity. And I also want to actually congratulate Boeing on some of the work that you've been doing in Ethiopia and South Africa. Sasol being now a South African company, I think there's a lot of connecting dots. Keith, I would like to come back to you. Finance a lot about risk, yeah, and basically categorize risk and address risk. So de-risking SAF projects, many of which are first commercial scale plans, is a complex thing. It needs many parties to work together. So how is partnership around supply chains the answer to that, and how can risks that come up in SAF projects be addressed?
Well, I'll just make two quick comments on this. Firstly, clearly it needs a systemic thinking around the sharing of risk, the identification of risk and the sharing of risk. And what we're talking about here is a whole system approach. We are creating a new system for fuels, and it definitely needs an understanding across that full system about what those risks are, how we share them, and as I said before, setting up the right mechanisms and the right funds, with the right risk appetite to appropriately invest in the risk across that full system. So collaboration is key. There's no question about it. Collaboration across all the players in the system is critical. It's also as the technology improves and as the volume improves, clearly it de-risks, and so then we get real unlocking of private capital. I mean, there's a lot of private capital out there that's ready to invest, but it does have to have the right risk-reward equation, and we're getting to that stage now, as Jane was saying. We're starting to get that tipping point of substantial private capital now being prepared to invest in the sector. We're not quite there at substantial scale, but it is getting close in our view.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if a brief follow-on question. I mean, this morning in the panel we said there's still not a full alignment yet. Yeah. So if you look at the financial models and you would look at the certainty investors would like to have, like in terms of long-term contracts and and then the risk that the finance sector is willing to take. Yeah. So the numbers don't square yet. Yeah. And would you support that argument? And obviously, I know Breakthrough Energy well. I mean, Breakthrough Energy is a very special entity. So Breakthrough Energy would, if you can kind of duplicate or clone them 100 times, so that would actually be helpful. But there aren't that many Breakthrough Energies there. So how do you see these this is converging in a way? Yeah. So the willingness to take risk and then the opportunity to give certainty.
Well, don't forget, I mean, Breakthrough Energy, Catalyst and Ventures didn't exist, just a few years ago. So it won't be the last one. We do need more of them. We need more people like Bill Gates and other collaborators to be part of this. Citi is one bank amongst others who've invested in Catalyst. It's at appropriate level. So yes, I mean, there will be more of these funds that are set up. It requires the skills within those teams to understand, again, that full system approach and to the technologies, the options. But as those skills improve, you can assess those risks in a much better form. So I would say that we need many more Breakthrough Energy Catalyst and Breakthrough Energy Ventures, and they will be coming.
Okay, so I think there's an important role to take. Kim, I would like to ask you about this topic about competition for feedstocks. Yeah, so as you organize forward buyers alliances that do forward purchase. I think the ambitious sustainability requirements is important also for your buyers, because they don't want any doubt on their investment and so on. So how do you see from your experience, how do you see the competition for feedstock play out in the next couple of years? So how do you see this? I mean, there's Zemba as we know, for maritime fuels, etc. So how do you see this coming forward?
I try not to think about it mostly. But, I also play a role in Zemba as well, helping to manage. Zemba is the Zero Emission Maritime Buyers Alliance, and helping to manage their RFP process, which is happening right now. Luckily for us, Zemba has been focusing on e-fuels, on the next generation. So maybe they can take that one, and we'll keep the biofuels and the aviation sector for the time being. But I think it's not a problem to be managed, in my view. I think there's a lot of studies out there saying there isn't enough. Okay, well, when it runs out, we'll find another option. This is like what you were saying, Elena, the same thing. All we can do is the best we can do, as long as we make sure that we maintain our standards. Then somebody out there will innovate and find what we need next when we run out. So it's really the standards that are the most important thing, in my view, because last year, for example, we wanted to buy 25,000 tons of CO2 reduced from SAF. It's not very much, actually. It was just a pilot project. And we only found 9,000 tons of CO2 that we could buy in the market that met our standard. Now, our members, if they were otherwise inclined, or if we weren't run by 2 environmental NGOs, might have said, you don't need to require the certification. It's just the first pilot. It was really important to us that we still had that feedstock to blending certification with a few additional checks as well. And we weren't gonna let that go just because the market hadn't gotten there yet. We just said, okay, well, we'll just buy the 9,000 tons. And next year, by the way, please get certified. And guess what? This year, all the fuel that was proposed to us in our RFP has been certified. It hasn't been a problem at all in our second RFP. So maintaining that integrity of the standard that we're following is the most important thing from us. And the reason why companies join SABA is because they want someone else to set the standard, so that it's not on their back to figure out how to understand SAF and whether or not they want to make sure they're not accidentally deforesting a rainforest somewhere, and they want it to not be their job to have to check, because if it's their job to check, they will somehow end up on the front page of The Guardian, right? And so it's important for them that there's safety in numbers. They join together under SABA, and then they give the job of making sure the SAF is sustainable to EDF and RMI and my team, and then they feel much more confident spending tens of millions in some cases. Now, this last RFP, we've got $250 million that we've raised in 1 year. So we need way more. I'm not saying that that's anywhere close to what we need, but it's a lot of money for these companies. They want to make sure that what they're investing in is truly sustainable.
Excellent, very good. Brian, on Kim already mentioned book and claim, yeah, and you're part of the SABA Alliance, so I would like to get maybe you can say a few words on how book and claim looks at from your angle, and it's not. While I think many folks would agree that bring the private sector in to secure some of the offtake and scale this and go beyond the regulatory commitment is kind of key for this. So not everybody is fully convinced yet. Yeah. Yeah. So there is some work to do. Maybe you can educate us and tell us how Boeing looks at this.
Yeah. Look, I as an informed observer, and we're taking best practices from the likes of the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials that has a book and claim handbook, and trying to start laying the foundation for what does good book and claim look like. We're also getting, there's criticism of that there's too much risk involved, and I often point out when we get criticized for thinking about an accounting mechanism, renewable electricity, right? So you don't have a wind farm in the back of your garden to ensure that you can plug into a socket and get renewable electricity. You trust that there is a blockchain or a verified system that delivers green electrons to your house, or more importantly, use any electrons, but that they get booked in the background against you and not double counted. So we do this all the time, and I think it's that mentality we need to bring to SAF. I also appreciate the conversation at CAF 10 days ago was look, we don't want to leave countries behind, and we don't want to make sure that some of this feedstock doesn't get moved into suboptimal places, or that then SAF gets sold at a premium after you've taken the feedstock away. So I really appreciate that there's a lot of work still to be done, and ICAO, coming out of CAF, said we're gonna work hard on that. So I think we have some ways to go, but it's vital. We're not going to have enough SAF all over. Look at what happened with Refuel EU, right? We got the 6% by 2030. You're not going to have it in every country. And finally, through the European Parliament, that was recognized. So there's a flexibility mechanism now built in. Long way to go to really design that mechanism, but there's a recognition for it. Christoph, if I can just go back to the feedstock point for 1 second, I really appreciate the conversation, and a reflection of a couple of these panels over the last couple of days has been almost like these chairs, like is it this one, is it this one, is it this one? Which one should we choose? And it's like you got to stack the chairs. You don't pick a chair. And if we're going to run out of HEFA, we'll probably find another methodology to produce it. But we're also working on power to liquid. We're working on gas, through gasification. So there is it's an and equation, not an or equation. And the final point I'll make is hydrogen is a feedstock, right? And we've been spending a lot of time thinking through when and how may hydrogen enter as an energy carrier beyond being necessary to produce SAF. And that's, I think, a really important debate that's being had in forums like these. Because guess what? The cement industry wants the green hydrogen, the steel industry wants the green hydrogen, and we need it to make SAF. And so I think we need to also start talking about green hydrogen as a feedstock to make SAF, because we're going to need it.
Yeah. No, I think feedstock competition will happen, and I think policy will play a major role. Yeah. So not all policy systems, there's different policy approaches in different countries. Yeah. So they don't necessarily stack up. I don't know, how do you see this? I mean, as a technology producer, you're probably one stage removed to...
Yeah, we are. And again, we rely on our key partner RSB, but it's the criteria we've used. We're not going to pick winners and losers. That's not our job. We can't just judge whether there was indirect land use change or not. All we know is there needs to be an SNSF.
Yeah.
And so I think we're actually going to be okay there. But again, one example are cover crops or rotational crops that are used in the United States. So they're not out of season. You're starting to grow crops that can be used for SAF production and don't compete with food. The Renewable Energy Directive in the EU is contemplating it, and in the US it's okay. And so we're seeing, to your point, different approaches for different historical reasons. But our job is to try to bring, again, partners that have sustainability criteria that are sound, and then also just encourage folks to keep an open mind, because we're going to need all the SAF we can get our hands on as a collective to save aviation.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Brian. I was going to say, in terms of being as a technology provider, in a way you're key to the sector, and Topsoe definitely has this great track record of innovation, coming from the catalyst side. So how do you see this technology proliferation and advancement? So I mean, we're hearing that, I mean, obviously there's some at commercial scale today, and technology readiness level is high, so it can be no technology risk or less technology risk perceived. Others may still have a time to go. Like 3 years ago, I was asking, well, when would PTL scale? Was like 25, 26, 27. I think now it's maybe a bit later. So how do you see the stacking up, as Brian was saying that, and how, in light of the regulatory environments in North America and Europe that are maybe taking different bets?
Yeah. And again, we are a technology provider, and so our duty and our contribution is to continue to develop technologies. But I think we are also a great sparring partner for stakeholders in the industry, but as well to regulators, because I think we as well have the duty to tell what's possible and what's not from a technology point of view. And that's what we are trying to engage in. Coming back to how technology will stack in the future, and I perfectly agree, it's not that you pick the chair, you just take one on the other. It's interesting, because definitely through 2025 might not be the year that you see the first PTL plant. even in a small scale. What we see is EFA continuing to extend into the future. Up to a couple of years ago, maybe people would have said 2030, and then you have a transition as people get creative on feedstock and the technology accommodates for that, and we look also into advanced feedstocks and advanced biofuels. It might be that PTL phases a bit further out in the future, but it's coming, and it's coming within the decade for sure. We at Topsoe, we are strong believer in PTL. We are just ramping up the production of solid oxide electrolyzer, which we think it's a competitive technology in terms of efficiency, especially in the production of PTX. So and in this case the X would be SAF. Thinking of feedstock and thinking of competing industries, looking at future fuels, thinking of the shipping industry, they will also be looking at things that rely on hydrogen, whether it's low carbon hydrogen or green hydrogen. But if you look at ammonia as a potential fuel of a future for shipping, which looks like to be the case, it will be competing on hydrogen. But at the same time, it will be a great opportunity for scaling up the technology, bringing down the cost, and therefore having overall a great positive impact also on ESEF in the future. How we dose our energies, certainly continuing building on EFA, looking at methanol to jet for the future, and looking at ESEF a bit further out.
Excellent. No, this is a super expert panel. Yeah, so I hope many folks will watch this and stream, and so these messages will go across the world. So really, thank you very much. It's Wednesday afternoon, end of transport day almost. Yeah, so I would like each of you to have like a 1 minute what should folks listening to this take away as a key thing for how can we jointly accelerate uptake of sustainable aviation fuel. Keith.
Well, just one comment is smart allocation of capital is going to be key here. We've broken down a lot of the barriers and the challenges. Now, and Brian, you're absolutely right about the technologies that we have to stack. What's critical is being able to, there's so much capital that we're required, isn't there? I mean, so much capital is required to decarbonise the global economy, and to be able to allocate that capital smartly, science-based, is just going to be very, very important, because there's only so much capital that the world is able to allocate.
Yeah, thank you very much. Kim.
I'm just going to be unabashed in my support for the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance, because I think if you're a corporate out there, if you're a company and you need to find a way to reduce your aviation emissions and you're not sure where to start, join SABA, flysaba.org. We'll help you. We'll make it as easy as possible. So I guess that's my kind of headline message. And the other is, this is an expert panel, because I wanted to talk to Ellen about the PTX comment that you just made, because in our latest procurement, we have a PTX proposal for delivery, very small amounts, starting in 2025. Very small, but then ramping up relatively quickly over the next 4 years. And we're buying all of it because, our companies want to be supporting the most advanced technology possible. So you're right, it's coming, and we've got contracts that prove it.
Ryan.
Well, from my end, the Air Transport Action Group has this Waypoint 2050 report that lays out how we collectively think as OEMs, as industry, how we'll decarbonize. What role will fleet renewal, operational efficiency, renewable energy, and advanced technology play, and how much do we may need to offset still? What we did at Boeing is we brought that to life through a cascade total climate impact model. We work with MIT, Cambridge, NASA, and IATA. And it's out there on the website. You go and you make your own assumptions. There's no proprietary data. It took every flight in 2019. And you can make your own assumption. How much SAF is available? What's the life cycle intensity of that SAF? When do new airplanes come into the fleet? Is the hydrogen green or not? What's the electricity that produces the PTL or that powers these airplanes? And depending on what your assumptions are, it has a different climate impact. If you're flying an electric airplane for 100 miles, which is sort of the range we're all thinking about, but your grid is brown, you're making the problem worse, not better, and it shows you that. And so our message has also been to consider the total climate impact of these different solutions, not just, again, pick the winner and hope for the best.
Elena.
And first of all, I want to say I'm positive. Even sitting here on this panel, I think there's so much energy and so much resources going into this endeavor that it will be a success. My word would be collaboration. I get inspired from my colleagues here, and we at Topsoe are a strong believer in collaborating in the industry, and we do a lot of efforts to put great minds together to make it happen, and it's badly needed.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's wonderful. That's also a wonderful, in a way, closing statement. I think collaboration and inspiration is key. This has been an expert panel. The message is a can-do message. Yeah. So I think it chimes with my impression from this week that it's really the private sector that makes the difference. Yeah, so we can maybe wait. I mean, in this case, Jane has done a great job, and I'm really grateful that she could join us. But I think it's the private sector that will pull it off, and I'm also it's promising, and I'm very optimistic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.